Welcome to the MVP Show. Our guest today is Business Application MVP, Sandy Ussia. She is a master of SharePoint and PowerApps and dedicates a lot of her time to sharing her experiences with the community. She's currently living a nomadic lifestyle and works and travels around the world, enjoying sips of beer along the way. Full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/88. Now let's get on with the show. Hi Sandy, welcome to the MVP Show.
Hi Mark, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, I'm pleased to have you on the show, but before we get underway, can you tell us about where you come from in the world, where did you originate, and where are you living nowadays?
Sure. I am born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the US, and lived there really most of my life in the Pittsburgh and surrounding areas, western Pennsylvania or far eastern Ohio, so consider that about the same. And actually, I am currently there as well, which is pretty unusual. We're planning to be here all summer long because my mother is still in this area and we're going to be helping her move in September. So I'm here until then, basically. But we don't have a house here any longer. We haven't for the last few years. So we're just Airbnb-ing it.
Excellent. Now I'm going to drill into that because that intrigues me in a little bit of the research I've done on you and your travels and whatnot. But tell me, what's Pittsburgh famous for?
I guess steel to begin with.
That's what jumped to my mind.
Yeah. And as you may already know, it has done a really good job, I think, of reinventing itself. The city has. So it is no longer at all dark and smoky and all that sort of thing, but is quite a vibrant city with lots of really cool neighborhoods. It gets named on like top foodie lists and things like that these days. There's a Google headquarters and lots of high-tech university robotics things and healthcare and stuff like that. I love my city. It's a pretty cool place, I think.
So if I was to visit Pittsburgh, what are the kind of top things that I should be doing?
I would say you'd want to go when it's warm enough that you can walk around because there are lots of nice trails along the rivers and, being out on the rivers and lots of neat riverfront things to do. Lots of interesting museums, art, and visiting neighborhoods. I guess that's what I would suggest, and checking out some of the local food scene. That's something that's and craft beer. It seems like there's a new craft brewery opening like every other week.
Well, you'd be pretty happy with that because I noticed that you have a taste for the beer.
I do.
So have you ever brewed anything yourself?
My husband is a brewer, yes.
Ah, excellent. Wow,
so that's one
great.
Of the things that we kept in our storage unit is his brewing equipment.
So you're living in Airbnb, and I noticed that you have a travel blog. What was the name of your travel blog?
Nomadic passeggiata.
Now, can you just explain that Italian phrase?
Sure. Passeggiata in Italian is when everyone goes for a walk after dinner, which at least in southern Italy, which is where my husband's family is from and where we've visited several times, that means like at 11 or midnight. And so it's just, at the end of the day, you walk around and you talk to people and you meet people and things like that. So we just thought that was sort of appropriate to name our travel blog that, because that's kind of what we're doing, is wandering around, meeting people.
I like it. So I've been a believer for some years now that you shouldn't get stuck into, if you like, the 20th century way of doing work and doing life. If you like the Industrial Revolution, which so many roles and careers are currently still based around. And my wife and I went traveling for 18 months and, we've lived in Australia for 4 years. We're now in London at the moment. And we've got many other countries on our list over the next 60 years to do. And
I've got a huge OneNote full of lists of places to go.
So what was that type of point in your life that you got to that you decided, right, we're going to move away from having a fixed abode or, setting up home, that type of thing, and move to a life of travel?
Well, I had owned a manufacturing business with my sister for many years, which was our family business that was started in the 1950s, manufacturing precast concrete stairs mostly. And so my sister and I ran it for 20 some years. And that's actually how I got into SharePoint, which is um, my sort of tech field, was that I had implemented that for my own business, and we were kind of running everything off of that. But we lost that business in the recession; we went bankrupt, and so obviously I couldn't be doing this if I still had that. But I would say, in a way, losing everything like that kind of made it not so difficult to get rid of everything else, if that makes sense. So at some point, I think it was actually after my husband and our son had done a week-long bike trip from Pittsburgh to DC, and we were in the Georgetown neighborhood of DC, just kind of standing along the river, drinking a glass of wine, looking out over the city, and just thinking, this would be fun to just do. Go to different cities, hang out, get to know the neighborhoods. And at that point, and it's still true, we've got our kids are on each coast of the US, which is quite a distance, and not in Pittsburgh anymore. And so there wasn't necessarily much holding us to Pittsburgh at that point, and so we just decided to go for it. I mean, it took us about a year to work out logistics, and we put our house on the market. We had a big-ish house and two cars and all the stuff that goes with all that, but uh, and then our house didn't sell when we were ready to go, so we just went ahead and went anyway and put our house up on Airbnb, and had people stay in it until we did sell it about a year later. But so anyway, we've been doing this thing for about 3.5 years now, and just living out of a carry-on bag and a laptop bag. That's what each of us carry.
Wow. So you don't you just basically have I just you have one carry on each plus your electronic equipment separate. That's it. I am impressed. Very
It's a little
impressed. Very
hardcore, but
impressed. Yeah.
it makes life very flexible and freeing.
Yeah. Ah, doesn't it? Doesn't it? As in we had a pack each and did I have a computer? Yeah, I did take a computer with me as well. I had a Surface. But it's funny as like settling into London, been here 9 months now, and you start to accumulate things pretty
Yes,
quickly
yep, you
again.
do. Yeah, we find anytime we're in a place, well, like right now, when we're going to be in Pittsburgh all summer, and we've got a car rented because we need to be able to get around, and we keep on putting stuff in the car. Or we were in the UK pretty much all the last fall, and we had done a long-term rental on a car because we were driving all around the country. And yeah, by the time we get to when we need to leave, we've got to purge again.
So tell me, you're a business applications MVP, so you've obviously and I understand that you started in SharePoint. How is the Power Apps Flow story become, kind of changed, if you like, what would have traditionally been done from a strictly SharePoint and using, the workflow tools that used to be available in SharePoint?
Well, that's what I had done a lot of actually when I was using SharePoint in my business, is working with the SharePoint designer workflows, and we had all kinds of processes set up for it was a custom manufacturer. So when we got new jobs and the whole bid to manufacturing process, I had put in, so that was SharePoint 2007 at the time, with workflows having to do with notifying people and stages and this and that, and same with HR processes and so on. And if I just keep on thinking, if I had had Power Apps and Flow available to me at that time, how much more I could have done. And, we could have had, um, our shop manager could have had a Power App on an iPad or something out on the shop floor and be able to, track and put in, we could have done all our QA that way. And yeah, so I've always been really interested in the sort of citizen developer, if you want to call it that, type of scenarios. And so that's as soon as I heard about Power Apps and Flow, so whenever they were in preview is when I kind of jumped on that and started giving presentations on those topics. And yeah.
So what's that journey been like? As in, has it just been the last 2 years that you've gone heavily in the Power Apps Flow side of things, and and how did you lead up to be nominated, becoming an MVP, and things like that?
I would say almost 3 years that I've been doing Power Apps and Flow stuff. I think the first one I did was at a SharePoint Saturday Pittsburgh. Um, and I mean, I've always been aware of the MVP program because I'm friends with lots of SharePoint MVPs and have always been a little jealous of them going off to Summit and learning all this new stuff and things like that. But I wasn't ever wanting to. I know that it's possible to self-nominate yourself, but I feel like that's cheating a little bit. So so I was just really happy to have gotten some nominations from the Flow group that I'm kind of involved in, and then that kind of got pushed a good bit from some people at Microsoft, which I'm very grateful for, and yeah, ended up getting that, which yeah, I'm just thrilled about it because it's something that I guess I would say that I've always wanted, but didn't really have I mean, I wasn't obviously trying to get that because I've always heard from other people if you're trying to get MVP, that's not the way to do it. So, but I do really enjoy going out and speaking on either SharePoint or Power Apps and Flow, and I've been quite involved with the SharePoint community going back to probably 2008 or so, because when I was implementing it in my business, I knew nothing about it. And I often say everything I learned about SharePoint, I learned from Twitter, because I was on Twitter pretty early and got to know via Twitter lots of really important people in the SharePoint space, and then got to meet people in real life at conferences, and am now on a hugging basis with most of them. So just being involved as much as possible in the community, I would say was my path.
Yeah, yeah. That's so good. That's so good. Tell me about where do things like feature like the Power Platform, as a new terminology Microsoft's had about out for maybe a year now, or maybe yeah, I think it's actually this time last year when that nomenclature first started coming out actually. Um and and of course, yeah, really. Just tell me about how that affects what you do, or do you not really have much to do with the Power Platform, but more on the Power Apps/Flow side of things?
Yes, I'm most of the Power Platform. I'm really just mostly know Power Apps and Flow. After having been named a Business Applications MVP, I feel like I have a responsibility to learn more about Power BI and Dynamics. um, and so I'm working on that, and I'm involved in the Dynamics communities, Power Apps and Flow user groups. I'm on the advisory board there, and um, am I was one of the organizers for the Power Platform Summit in Amsterdam that's coming up at the end of this month. Um, so I'm So I'll be planning to, try and go to some sessions having to do with Power BI and Dynamics there, and try and meet some of those people who I don't know yet, and just try, get a little bit more involved in that end. But yes, so far they seem a little bit separate to me, and I'm interested, especially to hear. I know we tried on the content committee for the Power Platform Summit to include some topics where they're trying to bring at least PowerApps, Flow, and Power BI together in some way, just so that I can get some more ideas of how those can interact with each other.
Yeah, interesting. It is interesting because, myself coming from the other side of the equation, I don't know, 15 years now, 16 years in Dynamics, and it's quite interesting because we see, you're right, there's kind of like a mixed story, right? We hear about Power Apps and Flow, and Power Apps is generally talked of from part of the community as really what we would consider Canvas apps. And yet, what the Power Platform does together, of course, bring all these technologies, really, even Office 365, you could consider part of that mix. And when you come to app development, you've got, the two type models, the Canvas experience and then the model driven, which formerly had its heritage in Dynamics. But even these days, as in I would, one of the things I'm staying a lot lately is Dynamics 365 is dead. Long live the Power Platform, because I think we're going through this transition phase, and the platforms of the past, like Dynamics, like SharePoint, etc., are almost moving well into the background, and part of our history. But the way forward is changing dramatically with the Power Platform, and then that leading to a massive future AI story, and yeah, and really a massive amount of opportunity, I think, developing.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know about Dynamics and SharePoint moving into the history, or however you said that, maybe moving into the background, or how you get at them is changing.
Yeah, so what happened is that within the Dynamics, ecosystem, they chopped the entire Dynamics app layers off the actual core platform, and that core platform is now common data service, where our common data model is built out, and ultimately, the coming together of those three tool sets, Power Apps, Flow, and Power BI to be able to build type of any application. So hence why yeah, my title is definitely controversial, and it's designed to make people think, and because yeah, I just like, even I think I have used SharePoint more than I have ever done in my life in the last 12 months, yet it's not an interface I'm actually directly engaging with, right? I'm accessing it via Teams. And I just think that yeah, there's becoming, I don't know, more efficient ways of carrying out these engagements with the technology now. So it's interesting. Anyhow, we've talked a bit about your technology, etc., where you're from. Now let's just go back to a bit more on the road type stories. Tell me about what are your tips for around Airbnb? Because I've used a lot of Airbnbs and still do. What are your top tips?
Actually, I wrote a blog post on that because so I would say our travel blog languishes a bit because it's easier to post on Facebook. But when I get to kind of a critical mass of people asking me one question over and over, then I write a blog post on it. So I've got one on Airbnb tips. But I would say for us, we have certain things that we always filter for. So filters are definitely a good thing, like Wi-Fi, kitchen, because if we're staying in a place really even longer than a couple days, we want to be able to make our own meals, not have to eat out budget-wise, and one bedroom as opposed to studio. And it's interesting how much that filters out when you put that, and also a whole house. That's a definite filter rather than just a shared room. um, but yeah, we like having a separate room just because sometimes I end up working odd hours since I'm covering lots of time zones with my uh, partner management role with Lightning Tools. And so that's just helpful to be able to have a separate place. And then looking for an interesting neighborhood, I guess. Like when I went to uh, SharePoint Saturday Stockholm in the fall to speak, uh, we even though it wasn't near the venue, we chose an Airbnb that was in Gamla Stan, the old city. So just because it sounded like it would be much more interesting, and it was. So things like that. Sometimes that's a little hard to choose if you haven't been to a place yet, and sometimes we find, we get to a place, pick an Airbnb, and then after walking around exploring, because we do try to explore a lot on foot, um, we find that there's probably some more interesting neighborhoods that we could have chosen. And if we, went back there, then we'd probably choose somewhere else. But um, that doesn't happen all that often. Usually, we've lucked out with some pretty darn good Airbnbs.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, what was the best Airbnb experience that kind of jumps to your mind, as in from the hosting experience, the location, the whole package, like which one would stick out in your mind?
Yeah, location, I would say one of the ones that I liked the best, location and the actual apartment. One of the ones I liked the best was in Cape Town, South Africa. I was only there for a few nights and it was only myself, but and I never met the host or anything, but it was a stunning apartment, a two-level apartment with this huge picture windows looking out onto Table Mountain, and it was just gorgeous, and, and just a really nice place. But yeah, then there have been some nice ones with. There was a dovecote we stayed in England, not quite Cotswolds, but not far from there, near the Ridgeway Trail. We like hiking a lot, so that was an important location. And in that one, it was a converted dovecote on an estate, and so it was a really cool space. But also, the host was super nice, and we basically didn't have to buy food for ourselves the whole time we were there. There was a fridge full of sandwich fixings and breakfast fixings and everything. So, yeah, that was a good one. Uh, then there were some that were pre-Airbnb, like just like book a batch and things like that that we stayed at in New Zealand and Australia kind of places. But yeah, that was years and years ago. Oh, that's one of my favorite countries in the world.
You're telling the
uh,
right person. Totally
I know.
agree.
Yeah, we've been there twice so far, planning to go back again. And our son and his wife had done a 9-month tour, bike tour of New Zealand. I mean, on their own. They were doing woofing and just traveling around. And so the second time we went, we met up with them while they were there and uh, did Wellington, which I really liked a lot. And then went right over to the South Island and went to Nilsson and Tata Beach and Kaikoura and Blenheim. Kind of did the northern South Island. Um, really like Nelson a lot. That was another really good Airbnb overlooking the bay and lots of craft beer.
Nice, nice,
So,
nice.
and
Yeah,
the first
it's a
time we
great
went,
country.
the first time we went, we hiked the Tongariro crossing, which was one of the top experiences of my life, I would say.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you
I've
done that?
done it twice. Yeah, I love it. I love it. We're just talking about when we go back to New Zealand to do it again because it is an amazing experience. I just on a clear day, you can see for miles, and it's just a different world, isn't it? At the top up there. So yeah,
Yeah, and
really.
I did the little side trip to go up to the top of Mount Tongariro.
And did
Uh,
you do it
yes, I
right to the
did.
top?
Yep.
Wow.
The picture I have of myself, my knees are wet though because I literally crawled the last bit because it was really through the snow because it was windy and I was scared to death. But I did it. And our son did the side trip and went to the top of Mount Naroi.
Wow, that's so good. That's so good. Um, I dare I say I did something a bit shocking while up there. The first time I was dead to shriek, and it was all in the snow. So that was my experience of getting up to the plateau. Was Yeah, it was very very cold, and there might be some photographic evidence from a distance. So yeah, but definitely a lovely place. So tell me, you do a lot of speaking as well as you know, at events and stuff. How do you kind of go through your prep type phases of getting ready to speak at an event?
I'm a bit of a procrastinator.
Mm-hmm. I think we all
So,
are.
so a lot of that comes right toward the end, but also the excuse I give myself is that things change so constantly with, at least with Power Apps and Flow, that you do have to be ready for things to have changed. That has happened more than once when I'm giving a talk and I go to, I would say my talks are mostly demo to, at least I try to make it that way, which does rely on having internet and things like that. So, but I try and do screenshots and slides just in case. But yeah, it's happened more than once that I'm in the middle of showing something and there's some new feature or it looks different than it did when I practiced a week ago. And so you just kind of have to go with that. Like, oh, that's new. Let's try that.
And so you're speaking, and actually, this podcast will come out after you've spoken at the Power. What are they calling it? Is it the Power
Power Platform
Platform
Summit. Yeah.
Summit in Amsterdam? I'm speaking there myself in a range of sessions. Tell me
Oh, I
the
didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So tell me, how do you, you know, we were just discussing before the differences or the nuances between the Power Platform, CDS, SharePoint, that type of thing. With this one, being that you're on the committee deciding around the kind of direction it takes, how have you found the Power Platform has landed in this community environment from purely the summit perspective? Over the things like user group and the NAV group, I think is their GP and finance and operations as well.
Well, I don't know very much about the how the dynamics groups have been over the years, and that's one of the things that I'm really hoping to get a better feel for being at the summit, um, as far as how the people who are coming from dynamics are seeing the sort of new kids, I guess you might say, and it's my understanding that that this will be the first Power Platform Summit, which I mean, or I guess wasn't called that before at all anyway, but where there are full separate tracks for Power Apps and a full separate track for Flow. So we were really cognizant of trying to choose sessions. And I should say, by the way, I did not choose myself, but rather we didn't really get any intro to Flow sessions submitted, and so the committee kind of said that I should go ahead and do that because that's one of the things that I do. Um, but anyway. Um, so we were trying to gear the sessions we picked toward knowing that are a lot of dynamics people at this conference and who might not have had that much exposure to Power Apps and Flow yet. And so trying to not get too advanced with it, but yet things that would be useful to the dynamics community. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, it's very good. It's very good, very good. So a lot of learning curves, I think, for
Uh-huh.
everyone.
Right. That's what we were
Totally agree.
thinking. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Well, it's time for those end questions now. So the quick fire questions. We might only have time for one or two. How do you define success?
Uh, um, being happy, I think, in yourself.
How do you stay productive?
Trying to focus on one thing at a time. Not sometimes not easy, but I try.
What's on your bucket list that you haven't done yet?
Oh, there are a whole list of countries that are on my bucket list. So I guess going to places that I don't know the language or have no concept of the language. That's something that I haven't done yet.
Sandy, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Before I let you go, how can people connect with you if they want to catch up with you online?
I would say the best way would be on Twitter. I'm Sandy U on Twitter, and I spend a fair bit of time there.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed listening to our show, please hit any of the social media buttons and share these episodes with your friends. Full show notes can be found at nz365guide.com/88. See you next time.